Hi friends, let's get rid of dementia and talk about this longevity vitamin that I actually take every day. In America, despite having the best, newest pharmaceutical drugs, hundreds of thousands of supplements, state-of-the-art healthcare, we can't get our rates of chronic diseases under control, including dementia. And we are just told it's because we're growing old. So how come our dementia rates are going up and the rates of dementia in Singapore are going down? Obviously, we have a lot to learn from the world. There's 2 more supplements that has been shown to slow biological aging. So we'll talk about those other supplements a little later. Imagine if this little supplement could reverse all dementias. Unfortunately, that would be too good to be true. And there will never be a one-size-fits-all pill to prevent dementia because there's just so many ways to get demented. But if you run out of this little guy, you will definitely not only get demented, but you will also get heart failure and kick the bucket. Guess how long you have to run on empty? 2 weeks. That's it. You want proof? Well, how about some clinical trials? Do you want to volunteer? That would be unethical. There have been plenty of published proof and generations of tens of thousands of families burying their loved ones. It's all documented in nutritional history, and you will understand why I take this supplement every day. This is an essential vitamin, vitamin B1, and this is a rate-limiting step for you to convert your carbohydrates or fats into energy. The discovery of thiamine won a Nobel Prize. This is so important that you're eating a thiamine supplement every time you eat cereal, bread products, or rice products because it's literally fortified in your food. Can you believe that? It's that important that the government got with Big Food to get you to swallow this without your permission. So for those of you who don't believe in supplements, then why does the American government fortify a bunch of vitamins, including thiamine, in grains? And if it doesn't make a difference to your health, why is it in your food? Because it absolutely does make a difference. And history has proven it. But the problem is really the amount. We are just not getting enough. The way we cook and prepare food and the other things that we eat and do actually will deplete our body stores of thiamine, which is already naturally pretty low. Oh, and by the way, if you have any questions about anything in this video, please talk to your own medical doctor. And don't make any changes in your diet or medications just because you heard something on the internet, even if it's from my videos. It's really ironic that we're fortifying foods like rice with thiamine that would have had the thiamine if we left the food alone, like brown rice. And do you know how they take this brown rice and make it into this white rice? Do you think you can do it at home? Probably not. I mean, if you really tried, maybe, but it wouldn't be worth your time to do it because it just takes too much work for very little yield. White rice was made possible through the help of engineering. Machines, they took out all this bran, the color out, the part that contains the thiamine. So this is the first ultra-processed food fortified with vitamins that was distributed on a mass scale to solve our global nutritional crisis of thiamine deficiency. This rice does not exist in nature in this form. Machines developed by engineers allowed this food to be mass produced. And generations of people are trained to eat this stuff. So they removed the bran and therefore the thiamine and extended the shelf life so this stuff lasts longer than this stuff. This way, the merchants can make more money. You know, they can make this in advance and still sell their product. This stuff also tastes better. It's softer, tastier, easier to cook. Now, doesn't that sound like the definition of a ultra-processed food? Unfortunately, many people just can't wrap their minds around that white rice, which has technically existed for thousands of years, is bad for their health. How can this be bad when it's an ancient food eaten by thousands of years in Asia? And do you know who ate white rice in ancient times? Wealthy people, the elites. Have you read the history books? Do you know how many people were wealthy in Asia? Not many. And each of the dynasties, they get dethroned and replaced. Seems to me like they didn't quite make good decisions. And when you don't have enough of this vitamin, thiamine, you're not going to make good decisions to fuel your brain. And if you keep reading about history, read about the part where tens of thousands of people perished from countries by eating white rice. So we have confused a highly processed, nutrient deficient food to be an ancient food that's supposed to help us with longevity. Well, if you have no other food, sure, but otherwise it is not. And I admit I was fooled for a long time too. And I didn't feel so bad because billions of people have been fooled around the world eating all different kinds of processed white rice products. I was hooked on most of them, whether it was a bowl of white rice, rice crackers, rice cookies, rice cakes, rice wrappers, or rice noodles, or mochi. This is the single most popular food on earth. On the surface, it definitely looks like a natural grain. Take a look at this. Look at that, right? It looks pretty natural, doesn't it? Yeah, but it really doesn't. Because take a look at this. This is brown rice, right? It has color. It's not quite so even. Well, if you look at white rice pretty closely, you'll notice that it has some chips. You see that? This is processed food. This rice is far from being a whole natural food. Metabolically, it does not work the same as this rice. Nobody should be eating white rice daily as your main food because it's a nutrient deficient, ultra processed engineered food that, by the way, has 10 times more arsenic than any other grain. I know it tastes delicious. I grew up on this stuff. So if you want to eat it, you should consider rinsing your white rice several times until it's clear and then dump out the rice water after it comes to a boil. I do it at least 2 times because my family won't give up rice. And by preparing rice this way, you can actually reduce 60% of the arsenic that was in the rice. Now, do you think restaurants, your rice crackers, your rice noodles, your rice breads, your rice cereals are doing this for you? Probably not. However, if you're truly rinsing your rice several times and then dumping out the rice water after it boils a few times, then you're going to be dumping out the thiamine too. Thiamine is a water-soluble vitamin. Like I said, this is a nutrient-deficient food, even if you're fortifying it with vitamins. The lack of B vitamin, thiamine, was proven not only to cause dementia, heart failure, and nerve damage, but paralysis. And it'll give you a first-hand view of the graveyard. But most people don't suddenly get these conditions. It's like credit card debt. You don't get it overnight. It's living beyond your means every day that gets you in bad credit. Likewise, when you get micronutrient deficiencies, you're running low every day until you are completely empty. How many of you drive cars in which the gas tank is almost empty, but the light isn't quite on yet, so you don't want to fill it up? My son does that. It limits how far you can go, doesn't it? How many people find themselves fatigued, forgetful, lack of energy, lack of motivation, maybe in a bad mood, or not making the wisest decisions in life? All these will limit how far you can go in life. Ultimately, you get more sedentary, reaching for sugary foods, caffeinated beverages, or other substances, hoping that it's going to make you feel better. And maybe all that time, you're missing thiamine. Obviously, our country has found itself buried in metabolic debt. And the way out is to look for foods rich in essential micronutrients like thiamine. Unfortunately, I wish it was easy as just taking a supplement. But lots of people do things that will inadvertently sabotage filling their nutritional bucket. Take alcohol. How many people drink alcohol because they think it'll help them de-stress or sleep? Alcohol helps with neither. It may make you pass out, but passing out is very different from resting. If you drink any alcohol, even if you think it's healthy to do like red wine, even though it's not, that alcohol will be transformed by your liver into a toxin called acetaldehyde. It is not only a direct carcinogen, it is also a neurotoxin. So if you want to get demented faster, just drink alcohol. If you want to mutate your DNA and get demented, drink alcohol. And I'm sure you're going to tell me that your uncle or great aunt or great grandfather drank a bunch and he lived until, 90. Well, good for him. It's just like winning the lotto. You can buy a lottery ticket, but chances are you're not going to be the winner. And statistics show most people actually lose a ton of money buying lottery tickets. And that's the same with alcohol. There's no acceptable limit of acetaldehyde in your body, even if it's from red wine. There's no way around it. If you drink alcohol, your liver will turn it into acetaldehyde unless your liver doesn't work. And then you have another problem. And fun fact, did you know that alcohol reduces your absorption of thiamine by at least 50%? So even if you fortify your alcohol with vitamin B1, like beer, you will be unable to absorb most of it. Have you met anyone who abuse alcohol? They don't make the wisest decisions when they're intoxicated, and their personality changes even when they're not drinking. And a large part is due to the damage alcohol causes. But their lack of energy and mood changes is probably also due to the lack of thiamine. Thiamine vitamin B1 is essential for ATP production, the primary way to keep the lights on in your brain cells, as well as every other cell in your body. Thiamine is a coenzyme in key metabolic pathways that convert glucose, fats, and proteins to produce ATP, particularly in the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, which converts pyruvate into acetyl-CoA, the molecule that enters the Krebs cycle. And that's how you make a bunch of ATP. Thiamine functions as thiamine pyrophosphate, a coenzyme needed for this reaction. So without thiamine, pyruvate builds up and gets converted into lactic acid. This leads to energy deficits and lactic acidosis, which is incompatible with life. In the Krebs cycle, or the TCA cycle, thiamine pyrophosphate is required for alpha-ketoglutarate dehydrogenase, a key enzyme in the Krebs cycle that helps generate NADH and FADH2 for ATP production. So without thiamine, the cycle slows down, leading to less ATP. Heard of the pentophosphate pathway? This pathway produces NADPH, but you also need thiamine to churn this reaction. Thiamine pyrophosphate is needed for transketolase, an enzyme in the pentophosphate pathway, which helps produce NADPH, which is needed for fatty acid synthesis and antioxidant defense. I'm sure you either know someone or are related to someone with dementia. So not only have I treated lots of patients with dementia, but I mentioned my mom had dementia. Having dementia is not only difficult for the patient, it's actually probably more difficult for their caregivers. I saw my mom's symptoms for quite a few years, but nobody would believe me. It's really hard to admit that your parent is losing their mind. This is not uncommon. One of my best friends, her boyfriend's mother is demented. She scratches her face without reason. She won't look at herself in the mirror. She stopped cleaning her house. And when the children confront her, she curls up into a ball on the floor. It is very hard for children to watch their parents go through dementia. If you ask for her name, her location, time and date, she can still tell you all of that for now. But obviously, there is something wrong with her behavior. And when you ask them if they are willing to go get help, they say no. And unlike a child that can be picked up by their parents and taken to a doctor, it's really hard for kids to do that to their parents. And as a result, many families struggle. They remain in denial. And they rationalize to themselves that their parent, they just want attention. And usually these cases don't end up well. The demented patient will get themselves very sick. And I don't want to do that to my children. And that's why I work especially hard to keep my brain sharp. Many of you know your body can use fat for fuel. Although thiamine is not directly involved in beta oxidation or fat breakdown, you actually still need it for acetyl-CoA metabolism, the pathway to convert that fat into energy. Your body breaks down triglycerides into fatty acids and glycerol. Now, fatty acids then enters beta oxidation, where they are chopped into 2 carbon units of acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA is a key molecule that enters the Krebs cycle for ATP production. So without this little guy, thiamine may be broken down, but acetyl-CoA can't efficiently enter the Krebs cycle, which reduces ATP output. Fat metabolism is also dependent on NADH and FADH2, both of which rely on proper Krebs cycle function, which is impaired without thiamine. Now, even though protein is the least efficient way to get energy, you can still break it down into amino acids to generate ATP. Now, some amino acids like leucine and isoleucine and valine, they enter energy metabolism through branched-chain alpha-keto acid dehydrogenase, which requires thiamine pyrophosphate. And without thiamine, the metabolism of these amino acids is impaired, leading to reduced ATP production, as well as toxic byproducts. So no matter what diet you eat or don't eat, everybody needs this little guy, and you need to have enough of it. So what happens when you don't have enough thiamine? Well, your body gets damaged in real time, and that physical damage can leave a permanent scar in your body, like in your brain. Initially, you may feel fatigue, weakness, and your pH may go up. That's metabolic acidosis due to the inefficient ATP production. And this is toxic. So if this happens in your nerve cells, well, you're going to get encephalopathy, called Wernicke's encephalopathy. Confusion, lack of coordination, you're going to have eye movement issues. With severe deficiency, then you get muscle weakness. Your heart is your biggest muscle. Heart failure and nerve damage. That's called beriberi. Unbelievable, isn't it? All this from missing this little guy, an essential water-soluble vitamin that you can actually replace for pennies. Have you ever used hand sanitizer? You know how dry alcohol makes your hand? In 2020, people tried using drinking alcohol when they ran out of hand sanitizer as a cleaning product. It works a little bit, but it's not great because it's not concentrated enough. I actually looked into it when I ran out of hand sanitizer, but then I realized it's just not going to do the job. You can't find a high enough proof. And that's why during the Civil War, pouring alcohol, even if you poured vodka or brandy, before you do surgery, they won't prevent the soldiers from sepsis and gangrene. However, alcohol sanitizer is pretty good at killing many germs. So when I see patients, I'm always cleaning my hands, probably like 40 times at least easily within a few hours. And if you're a healthcare worker, you probably are doing the same thing. It's so bad that by the end of the day, my hands, they feel so dry and it looks like they're about to crack. And some people, they want to put lotion on, but lotions don't work for healthcare workers. How do you lotion up your hands when you see multiple people back to back and you have to do a physical exam on your people? So I learned early on that I really needed to take enough specific supplements, essential nutrients that would optimize my immunity so that my skin could repair. Of course, it's always best to avoid the toxin. So I try to wash my hands under running water as much as possible instead of using alcohol hand sanitizer. But it's still pretty rough on the hands. So it's hard for a healthcare worker to have soft, silky hands. But the health of your skin actually tells me a lot about what's going on metabolically inside your body. Your skin is the largest immune system. It's kind of like the sentinel chicken. So when your body is suffering, struggling with metabolism, your skin won't heal. And you can bet if your skin isn't healing, you're struggling inside as well. And over time, if this insult is happening in an organ, like your brain, these small insults aggregate into big ones. And this is why it's important to have an adequate supply of essential nutrients every day, every hour, really every minute. And if you don't have the right equipment to take care of stress, you really just get scars. Scars in the brain prevents neurons from talking to each other, and they can be called amyloid plaques or tau tangles or just simply missing brain tissue. So if you look at the brain of people with Alzheimer's, they don't just have amyloid plaques. They have ischemic events and empty space. Their brains literally shrunk. But alcohol may not be your thing and you may not drink any of it. But do you cook your food at high temperatures, especially for long periods of time, like baking? That actually destroys thiamine. And this is why fortifying flour seems to be a very inefficient way to get people adequate thiamine. Because what do people do with flour? They bake it and they add baking soda to it. Thiamine is heat sensitive and prolonged exposure to heat denatures it, so then you don't actually get any. Temperatures above 100 degrees Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit can significantly degrade your thiamine. I mean, I believe baking is at 350 degrees for most people. And if you bake at these higher temperatures, like 350 to 400, you can cause a significant loss of thiamine. And when you add baking soda or other alkaline ingredients, you further degrade the thiamine. This thiamine is water soluble. So if you're boiling and then you don't drink that water, you throw it away, then you basically are throwing away the thiamine. People who tend to eat a lot of baked, processed foods often develop diabetes at a higher rate because baked goods are full of toxins to the mitochondria. And if you don't have thiamine to help your mitochondria out, the toxins cause more damage. If you have diabetes, you actually increase the rate at which your kidneys will pee out water-soluble vitamins like thiamine. And how do people consume baked goods? They drink coffee or tea with it. Well, coffee or tea not only can be a diuretic, but it can also degrade thiamine because of the tannins. Maybe you think you're doing a good job eating raw seafood. Potentially raw sea animals have thiaminases or enzymes that can break down your thiamine in your gut so that you actually don't absorb it, even if you eat it. Even fish who eat fish with thiaminases don't make it.
Hi friends, I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
And of course, we can't forget about preservatives. Foods that have high sulfites, either added or naturally there, like wine, can further destroy thiamine. Now, before the invention of thiamine supplements, it's easy to imagine why Wernicke's encephalopathy and beriberi was so prevalent around the world. So hence, thiamine is literally the first longevity vitamin. In America, we took the big brother approach to nutrition and secretly added thiamine to refined grains. However, the countries that suffered the most casualties, Asia, they didn't do that. Instead, they taught their people how to diversify their diet with whole food. So who do you think did a better job at health outcomes for their country? Pretty much, I think the answer is clear now. Look at our astronomical rates of diabetes, obesities, and cancers. Look how long we live in America. This is a result of training people to eat processed food fortified with what we thought was essential vitamins. Obviously, just eating thiamine alone is not going to determine your longevity. Our nutritional GPA as a country is getting lower and lower, and there are actually more factors that continue to sabotage your body's ability to get enough thiamine. Big pharma. Pharmaceuticals became a way of life in the mid-20th century for thousands and now millions of Americans. How many times have you reached for an acid or maybe asked for a prescription to help you with indigestion or heartburn? Over-the-counter antacids or prescription proton pump inhibitors both reduce your body's ability to absorb thiamine. And maybe this is why there's a high risk of dementia associated with people taking chronic proton pump inhibitors. How about asking your doctor for a diuretic because you have swelling in your legs? If you're taking diuretic medications that makes you pee out more water, you actually increase your urinary excretion of thiamine. So even if you absorb thiamine, you don't get to keep it. Unfortunately, I'm not done. Have you heard that some people think metformin is a longevity drug? There's a Harvard professor taking it, even though he doesn't have diabetes. And on top of that, he's telling people to take it for longevity. In fact, I recently had a physician colleague text me to ask me my thoughts about metformin for longevity. Here's my response. I sent her an article and replied, I honestly don't know one person who I think is healthy and takes metformin. Metformin reduces thiamine absorption. But of course, you shouldn't stop any of these drugs that I'm talking about because sometimes they serve as a lifeline to help you get over a hump. But a lifeline shouldn't be a permanent way of life. It's like a life jacket. You can't take it off until you learn how to swim. But if you don't know how to swim, you shouldn't take off your life jacket. If you want to change your drugs or get off of your prescriptions, please talk to your medical doctors to help you change your lifestyle. And of course, we wouldn't need so much big pharma if we didn't eat the creations of big food. The trillion-dollar force of food engineers creates 15,000 new processed foods every year for America and the world to enjoy. And even if you believe in evolution, how does nature evolve so quickly? In fact, nature is doing the opposite, and we're losing species at a massive rate. Believe it or not, the majority of our processed foods are made from one plant, wheat. Wheat flour, that's fortified with nutrients like thiamine. Then how do you wash down heavy carbohydrate meals with another carbohydrate, a sugary beverage? And guess what? The more carbohydrates you eat, faster you use up thiamine. So you get to empty faster when you stress your body with processed carbohydrates made out of flour and sugar. But everybody gets to empty at a different pace. If you have kidney issues, you actually get to empty faster because your body is unable to keep thiamine. 3.5 million people in the United States have kidney disease. That is more than 1 out of every 7 people. And the kicker is 9 out of 10 adults who have kidney disease, they don't even know they have kidney disease. And if you have high blood pressure, you're going to have kidney disease. I can bet on that. That's why you really need to get your blood pressure under control. High blood pressure is the easiest way to destroy your kidneys because you're basically putting pressure to the system, kind of like blowing up a balloon. The structures in your kidney actually look like those long balloons that people use at parties to shape into animals and hats for kids. And I used to hate watching them twist and turn the balloons because inevitably some of the balloons pop. And I hate that bang. Half of the entire population in the United States has high blood pressure. And that will eventually pop something somewhere, especially in your kidneys. And do you know what the number one cause of high blood pressure is? Excess sodium. And guess what is the number one food to collect that excess sodium? Bread, refined flour products. Somebody wrote a comment on one of my videos earlier discounting that sodium is a problem because it's an essential mineral that the body needs. Well, glucose is an essential nutrient that the body needs, but everybody somehow thinks that it's the villain and that they discount the fact that the real villain, which has been around way before current diabetes and obesity epidemic, is actually sodium. But we'll save sodium for another video. And let's talk about things that we all agree on, like heavy metals. Lead and mercury is bad for the body, especially your brain, partially because it inhibits your body's ability to metabolize thiamine. All the toxins enter from your gut. So many toxins enter from your gut. And if you have gut problems, whether you're having chronic diarrhea or you have inflammatory bowel disease, you're going to decrease your ability to absorb thiamine. Now, although I don't believe that growing old guarantees you're going to get dementia, I do acknowledge that as you age, you will make less stomach acid. And the right amount of stomach acid can enhance your absorption of thiamine. which primarily occurs in the small intestine. But thiamine also needs to be processed first, and you need adequate stomach acid to convert thiamine into its bioavailable form. So low stomach acid, hypochlorhydria states, which can result from aging or taking an antacid or proton pump inhibitor, can impair thiamine absorption. On the other hand, strong acids, such as those used in industrial processing or extreme cooking conditions, that can degrade thiamine, making it really unabsorbable. Highly alkaline conditions, I had mentioned baking soda or excessive antacid use, can also destroy thiamine and hinder its absorption. Thiamine deficiency has been a known source of dementia for over a century. Now, if governments think that it is so important for them to automatically supplement it in your food, then why don't people think it's important for you to get an adequate supply on a daily basis on your own? Nobody talks about this because it's cheap. I mean, it costs pennies for one little pill. So who's going to make any money out of selling this? And hence the dilemma. How can you make sure you're getting plenty of thiamine? The recommended daily allowance value is barely any thiamine. And when you're depleted, you're just barely skimming the surface. It's not going to replete you. Do you really think that the average person can calculate accurately exactly how much thiamine they need? Especially considering that they're eating lots of carbohydrates. Even if they had a food diary, it's not so simple. I can't even do it. So I personally don't take any chances. There's no reason for me to repeat history. My dad was a history teacher and he knew Asian history very well. And that is why every day he took vitamin B1 every single day for as long as I could remember. And he always emphasized this to my mom, who had no background in nutrition, science, health, or education. And even though my mom got dementia, she remembered to always take her thiamine. And like I said, there are many roads to getting demented. So there is no one magic pill, even though we wish for it. So now I take a thiamine supplement every day. If you want to know what I take, I have a link in the show notes below. And unlike other supplements, there's really no known toxicity for thiamine. I mentioned how the RDA is the minimum requirement for a normal person doing minimal things in life and not eating an astronomical amount of processed carbohydrates. When they made up the RDA, people weren't eating ginormous amounts of processed foods, nor were they taking ginormous amounts of polypharmacy. We haven't changed those numbers for decades. Seriously, who will repeat those studies? I mean, America thinks that we figured out all our essential micronutrients. So why are we so nutrient deficient? This is my number one insurance policy to protect my brain. And this is what I give my mother-in-law, who's in her 90s. And it's really not just thiamine that is critical to supplement. And this paper was just published a few days ago from the longevity country, Switzerland, that ranks number 5 in the world. Paper in Nature showed that taking omega-3 and vitamin D supplements on a daily basis, along with regular exercise for at least 30 minutes 3 times a week, appeared to slow the biological aging on a molecular level by 3 to 4 months. Now, this paper doesn't make or break my daily habits of fortifying essential vitamins that I think are necessary in my diet. And I've already been doing this for other health benefits, but it just reaffirms my belief that supplements used correctly can be very important to help with longevity, but you have to get enough of it. So how do you know if you're low? Well, you have to get tested. Thank goodness I got my vitamin D level checked so that I could correct a single digit number. My vitamin D was in the toilet. And I only got it checked because my dad's number was lower than mine. 0. Nobody checked his vitamin D until after his spinal fracture. And he belonged to an HMO. So unfortunately, replacing his vitamin D was too late for my dad. But I checked mine. And since then, I've been working on improving it. And I also checked my children, and 2/3 of them were also low. I think a lot of people don't realize vitamin D is an essential vitamin. It's really a hormone that our body should be making, but we're not doing it. And there's lots of reasons why people don't do it efficiently. Number one, we really stop going in the sun. If you don't go in the sun, you can't make vitamin D. But number two, if you're excessively overweight and have layers of cutaneous fat, or if you're dark skinned, you will significantly make a lot less vitamin D. Vitamin D receptors are in every single cell in your body, including brain cells. So when you don't get enough vitamin D, it's not just bad bones. Low vitamin D levels are linked to memory loss, reduced cognitive function, and a higher risk of dementia. Vitamin D may help clear amyloid plaques, and deficiency actually can lead to brain atrophy. That means your brain shrinks, particularly in areas responsible for memory and learning. Heard of serotonin? Vitamin D plays a role in serotonin production, the neurotransmitter that regulates mood. And deficiency is associated with a high risk of depression, seasonal affective disorder. Studies suggest vitamin D supplementation may improve mood in those with low levels. Vitamin D helps regulate neurotransmitters like dopamine and glutamate, which are essential for focus, learning, and motivation. So if you're deficient, you can get brain fog, difficulty concentrating, and slower information processing. Doesn't this sound like thiamine deficiency? That's the thing with essential nutrients. You only need to be missing one to feel very bad. Low vitamin D levels have been linked to multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, and other neurodegenerative conditions due to its role in reducing inflammation and supporting nerve function. So when you get an adequate amount of vitamin D, you are improving anti-inflammatory defense and protect your neurons. Vitamin D is involved in melatonin regulation and circadian rhythm. But to properly absorb, activate, and utilize vitamin D, the body requires several key micronutrients, like magnesium, which is required for the enzymatic conversion of vitamin D into its active form, calcitriol. Without enough magnesium, vitamin D remains inactive. Vitamin D increases calcium absorption, but K2 directs calcium into bones and teeth instead of arteries or soft tissue. Therefore, it prevents random calcification. And guess what? Your body can make enough K2 if you just eat some green leafy vegetables. Zinc also helps with the synthesis of vitamin D receptors, which are crucial for all your cells. 1 billion people around the world are deficient in zinc. Boron helps to increase vitamin D levels by reducing breakdown and improving calcium absorption. And like everything else in life, there needs to be a balance. Excess vitamin D is not good either. Too much vitamin D, especially without vitamin A, can cause an imbalance in calcium regulation. Vitamin A ensures proper immune and bone health. And when you're taking vitamin D, since it's a fat-soluble vitamin, eating it with a little bit of fat enhances its absorption, like eating an avocado. But when it comes to fat, most people aren't really missing fat in their diet, except omega-3 fats, which also reduces inflammation and supports brain function. Now, the brain's solid tissue is about 60% fat. Much of it is made out of DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, one of the key omega-3s. So it's a major structural component of brain cells. And you get omega-3 fats directly from marine life, which gets it from algae. Or you can eat certain nuts and seeds to get you omega-3 fats. I actually grew up on a ton of seafood because my mom told me that if I eat seafood, you'll be smarter. Guess who told her that? Her grandmother told her that. So my great-grandmother would have been born in the 19th century before the discovery of omega-3 fats. Isn't that amazing? The wisdom of old people. Omega-3 fats are essential for fetal brain development, as well as cognition throughout your entire life. So eating enough omega-3s will enhance your synaptic plasticity and improve the ways in which your neurons communicate. So higher DHA levels are linked to better memory, faster thinking, and improved problem-solving skills. And you can imagine if you're deficient, it's associated with cognitive decline and an increased risk of dementia. So when you have an adequate amount of omega-3s, you lower your brain inflammation. High inflammation leads to chronic inflammatory diseases of the brain. And the brain, it undergoes a ton of inflammation, oxidative stress. So this is why I take omega-3s every day to protect my neurons from free radical damage. Another omega-3s called eicosapentaenoic acid, or EPA, that helps to regulate neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine that affect happiness, motivation, focus, impulse control, and attention. So low levels of EPA and DHA are both strongly linked to high rates of depression, anxiety, and mood swings. People with major depressive disorders, they often have low omega-3 levels. DHA helps produce melatonin, that hormone that helps to regulate sleep. So low omega-3 levels are linked to poor quality sleep, insomnia, and shorter sleep duration. Omega-3s also support blood flow, blood vessel health, reduce inflammation, and nerve repair. Americans are not only not eating enough omega-3 rich foods, but they are overeating omega-6 foods that then competes with omega-3s. So people with lower levels of omega-3, they appear to have smaller brain volumes, similar to aging. Now, of course, these are observational studies. And if you overdo omega-3s, there are side effects as well. But really, who's going to volunteer to suffer permanent brain damage for a randomized clinical trial to see if it's good or not good for you? Good epidemiologists has helped us solve our nutritional problems problems from iodine deficiency to thiamine deficiency. And you can be a skeptic and think that all supplements are expensive pee. Of course, if you can get all your vitamins in food form, well, that's the best form. But good luck with that. I wish I could do that, and I still try my best to get it in food form. So if you want to learn more about the best sources of omega-3 fats, watch the next video.